A 14-year-old girl vanished during a small-town sleepover in upstate New York. No forced entry, no trace, just an open window and a note that didn't make sense. For 12 years, the case sat cold, until her childhood friend, cleaning out her attic, stumbled upon an old diary sealed in a box of forgotten memories. Inside were confessions, hidden codes, and a truth that would tear their town apart.
It's late, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears. A summer night in 1993, and somewhere on the edge of Maple Hollow, a girl's voice fades into the dark. No one hears the door open, no one sees her step outside. By morning, she's gone. A missing pillow, a window cracked open, and one single sock left on the porch. It's like she vanished into thin air. Her name was Katie Lockwood. She was 13. And that night, she was supposed to be safe, sleeping over at her best friend's house just a few blocks from home. The two had planned it for weeks: movies, popcorn, whispered secrets under flashlights. A normal night. Until it wasn't. The police would call it a disappearance. The town called it a tragedy. But years later, when everyone had stopped asking questions, something unexpected surfaced. An old diary. Faded, soft-covered, the kind girls used to write in with glitter pens and stickers. Inside were words that changed everything. Words that made people question what really happened the night Katie Lockwood disappeared. But to understand the meaning of that diary, we have to go back. Back to where everything seemed normal. Back to when Katie was just another kid in a town that forgot to lock its doors. Maple Hollow wasn't the kind of place where bad things happened. It sat between endless fields and forests that smelled like rain. People left their windows open at night. Kids rode bikes until dusk and came home with scraped knees and pockets full of marbles. Everyone knew everyone. Or at least, that's what they liked to believe. Katie was the kind of girl people remembered for her laugh. Loud, kind of snorty, contagious. She had curly brown hair and a front tooth that turned slightly inward, something she used to hide when she smiled for pictures. She loved drawing, had a pet rabbit named Clover, and collected friendship bracelets like trophies. Her best friend was Emily Crane, a quiet, shy girl who lived 2 streets over. Emily's house was smaller, older, the kind that creaked when the wind blew, but it was cozy. And her mom, a single nurse named Laura, always baked cookies for the girls when they had sleepovers. That Friday in June, the air was heavy with the smell of rain. The girls watched The Goonies and played MASH on the living room floor, dreaming about who they'd marry one day, what kind of houses they'd live in. Normal. Ordinary. Safe. At least that's how it seemed. Sometime after midnight, they climbed into their sleeping bags, Katie on the couch, Emily on the carpet beside her. They whispered about a boy in their class named Ryan Keller, the kind of crush that made them giggle into their pillows. At 1:07 a.m., the living room lamp flickered once. Emily remembers that part. She remembers the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of her mom coughing upstairs, and Katie whispering, "Did you hear that?" Emily didn't, but when she looked at Katie, she noticed something strange. Her friend was staring toward the window, eyes wide, frozen like she'd seen something outside. "What is it?" Emily whispered. Katie hesitated. "I thought I saw someone by the tree." Emily sat up. Nothing. Just the silhouette of the oak tree and the soft buzz of crickets. They laughed it off. Maybe it was a shadow, a trick of light. Kids see things when they're tired. But that moment, that small forgotten second, would become the line between before and after. By morning, Katie Lockwood was gone. The front door was unlocked, her shoes still by the couch, her backpack untouched. Emily woke up to sunlight cutting through the blinds and a hollow feeling in her stomach. She thought Katie had gone to the kitchen or the bathroom, but when she called her name, the house stayed silent. When Laura Crane came downstairs and realized the door was open, she froze. Her coffee cup hit the counter. Within hours, police cars lined the street. Officers searched the yard, the woods, the creek that ran behind the houses. They found nothing. No footprints, no signs of struggle. Just that single sock on the porch. The left one, pink with a little heart stitched near the toe. For days, the whole town searched. Volunteers combed the fields, flyers went up on light poles and shop windows. Missing, Katie Lockwood, age 13. Reporters came, then left when nothing new surfaced. Months passed. The Lockwoods moved away. Emily stopped talking, and Maple Hollow slowly slipped back into its quiet rhythm, like the earth itself wanted to forget. But time doesn't erase everything. Sometimes it just hides it. 12 years later, 2005, Emily was 25, living alone in a small apartment above a bakery 2 towns over. She had built a life that looked steady from the outside. A part-time librarian, quiet, polite, always smiling when people asked how she was. But inside, she still carried the weight of that night. She still saw that window when she closed her eyes, still heard Katie's voice whispering, "Did you hear that?" One rainy evening in September, Emily's mother called her. They hadn't spoken much since Laura moved to Florida. But that night, Laura's voice sounded soft, almost apologetic. "I was cleaning out the attic," she said. "Found an old box of your things. Thought you might want them." Emily hesitated. "What kind of things?" "Journals, school notes, some stuff from when you and Katie used to hang out." Emily agreed to pick them up that weekend. She wasn't expecting anything special, just nostalgia, the kind that hurts in a sweet way. But when she opened the box 2 days later, buried beneath stickers, Polaroids, and folded notes, she found it. A diary.
It was pale blue, worn at the edges, the kind sold in dollar stores with a tiny lock that never really worked. A single charm dangled from the spine, a small silver heart. When Emily opened it, the air seemed to shift. Inside, the handwriting was unmistakable, round, neat, full of loops and hearts over the eyes. It was Katie's. The first few pages were innocent, doodles, school gossip, secrets about boys, but the tone changed near the end. The entries grew darker, more anxious, and one in particular made Emily's blood run cold. It read, "I think someone's watching me, outside the window. I told Em, but she didn't see him. I don't think I'll tell anyone else. He said not to." Emily stared at the words, her hands shaking. The date written at the top? June 12th, 1993, the night she disappeared. She flipped the page, another entry, written the same night, only a few hours later. "He said he wants to meet me outside, just to talk. I don't think he'll hurt me. He said he knows something about my brother. I'm scared but curious. Maybe it's nothing." And below that, one final line, half finished, ink smudged like it was written in a hurry. "If something happens to me, tell Em." The rest was blank. Emily's breath caught. Her stomach turned cold. All those years she had carried the guilt of falling asleep that night, and now it felt like Katie had been whispering from the pages, frozen in time, trying to finish a sentence that never ended. Emily didn't know it yet, but that diary wasn't just a relic of the past. It was a door. And once she opened it, there was no closing it again. Because the moment she began to dig, Old ghosts started waking up, and the small town of Maple Hollow, long quiet, was about to remember what it had tried so hard to forget. The morning Katie Lockwood disappeared, Maple Hollow stopped breathing. Parents kept their children home. School buses rolled through half-empty streets. At the town square, whispers turned into theories before the coffee even cooled. She ran away, some said. It's the woods. People get lost out there. But deep down, no one believed she just left. Katie wasn't the kind of girl who disappeared by choice. Her mother, Diane, could barely stand when the deputies came to ask questions. Her father, Mark, stared out the window, jaw tight, refusing to cry. He kept saying, "She's probably with someone she knows." That line repeated like a prayer that never worked. The sheriff, then, was a man named Henry Broderick. Broad shoulders, thinning hair, the kind of man people trusted simply because he'd always been there. But even he looked unsettled when he saw the open door and the untouched belongings. No sign of forced entry, he told reporters. No indication of struggle. That should have been a relief. Instead, it made everything worse. The police started their search with the obvious. Neighbors, the woods, the creek. Dogs sniffed through the underbrush until they grew tired. Helicopters scanned from above. Nothing. Not a trace of Katie Lockwood. It was as if the earth had swallowed her whole. Emily, only 13, spent those days in a fog. She remembered people asking her the same questions again and again. When did you last see her? Did she say anything strange? Did you hear anything that night? But no matter how many times she answered, she felt like her words didn't matter, like she was being treated as part of the story, not a person. The police searched Emily's house, too. They combed through the backyard, checked the windows, even questioned her mother about family visitors. But they found nothing. No fingerprints, no footprints, no broken latch. Just that sock on the porch. Small, innocent, heartbreaking. For weeks, volunteers walked the forest line. They followed rumors of a white truck seen near the road that night. They drained part of the creek after a fisherman thought he saw something in the water. Each lead went nowhere. By the third month, search parties had dwindled. Summer turned to autumn, then winter. The Lockwoods stopped showing up to the police station every week. People stopped leaving porch lights on for her. By Christmas, her case had turned cold. But not everyone forgot. Emily couldn't. She tried to move on, to go to school, to laugh with friends, but the guilt sat in her chest like a stone. She replayed that night 1,000 times, searching for something she missed. Maybe a sound, a voice, a clue that could have stopped it all. But there was nothing, only silence. Years passed. The Lockwoods eventually left Maple Hollow. Some said they moved west. Others whispered they divorced. No one really knew. The house they left behind stayed empty for years, a hollow memory at the end of Willow Street. And so, for 12 long years, Katie's disappearance became another unsolved story, a whisper in town, mentioned only in hushed tones at the diner or during late-night news specials about missing children, until Emily found that diary. The day after reading it, Emily sat in her small kitchen, staring at the blue-covered book as rain pattered against the window. Her heart raced. Every word felt alive. She wanted to tell someone, anyone, but she hesitated. Who would believe her? Who would care after all these years? But something inside her said she couldn't ignore it. She called the Maple Hollow Police Department, half expecting the number to be disconnected. To her surprise, someone answered. "Maple Hollow PD, Sergeant Owen speaking." Her voice trembled. "My name is Emily Crane. I was a part of the Katie Lockwood case. I think I found something. A diary." There was a pause on the other end. "Ma'am, that case is over a decade old. Are you saying this diary belonged to her?" "Yes, I'm sure of it." He promised to send someone to collect it. The next day, 2 officers came, one young, one older. They asked polite but careful questions: how she got it, whether she'd read it, if she'd shown anyone else. She handed it over, reluctantly. When they left, the apartment felt emptier than before. Weeks passed. No update. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived from the department. A single sheet of paper with formal words that didn't say much at all. The diary has been received and logged as supplemental material to the Lockwood case. Investigation reopened for review. Emily stared at the words. It felt small, almost meaningless. But something had changed. She could feel it. Like a door had cracked open in a room that had been sealed for years.
Then, 2 days later, she got a call. "This is Detective Paul Hendricks, Cold Case Division. I wanted to talk about what you found." He spoke with the tone of someone who'd seen too many unsolved stories, but something about this one had hooked him. He asked her to come in for a chat. When Emily arrived at the station, he met her with a worn smile. His office smelled like stale coffee and old files. On his desk sat the diary, sealed in plastic. "I read it," he said. "You were right. It's her handwriting. There's something in here." He flipped open a copy of one of the pages. This line about the man by the tree, that wasn't in any of the original statements. You never mentioned it. Emily swallowed hard. "Because she didn't tell me until that night, and I thought she was joking." Hendricks nodded slowly. "You ever notice anyone near that house back then? Someone hanging around?" She shook her head. "No, but there was something she said once, a few weeks before she disappeared. She said she thought her brother was keeping a secret. I didn't think much of it." That caught Hendricks' attention. "Her brother?" "Yeah, Kyle. He was older, 17 at the time. He used to drive her to school." Hendricks leaned back. "Interesting, because when we looked into him back then, he gave a solid alibi. Said he was at a party that night. But guess who hosted that party?" Emily frowned. "Who?" "Ryan Keller. The same boy you two used to talk about in your little games." The name hit like a ghost from the past. Ryan Keller. The boy they giggled about at 13. Emily hadn't thought of him in years. Hendricks continued. "Ryan moved out of town not long after Katie vanished. No record of trouble, but something about him never sat right with me. Too calm, too confident. He told reporters once, 'She probably just ran away.' Strange thing to say about someone you knew, don't you think?" Emily nodded, her stomach twisting. That night, she went home and couldn't sleep. She dug through the old box her mother gave her, searching for anything else. Letters, photos, something that might connect the dots. Near the bottom, she found a folded piece of notebook paper she didn't remember saving. It was written in Katie's handwriting, a note dated 2 days before she disappeared. I think I know what Kyle did. I can't write it here, but if I'm right, everything changes. I'll tell you Friday." Friday. The day of the sleepover? Emily's breath caught. What had Kyle done? What could a 13-year-old girl possibly uncover that would lead to her disappearance? She called Hendricks the next morning. "You need to look at her brother again," she said. But by the time police reached out to Kyle Lockwood, it was too late. He'd died 3 years earlier in a car accident. No witnesses, no chance for questions. Still, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the truth was hiding in plain sight. One night, she drove back to Maple Hollow. The Lockwood house stood empty, boards nailed over the windows, paint peeling from the siding. The wind moaned through the trees. She parked across the street and sat there, hands gripping the wheel. For a moment, she thought she saw movement near the porch, a flicker of light, a reflection maybe, or something else. Her phone buzzed, a text, unknown number. It said, "Stop digging." Emily froze. Her eyes darted around the empty street. No cars, no people, just the echo of her own heartbeat. That's when she realized someone else still remembered that night too. Someone who didn't want her to find the rest of the story. And whatever Katie had seen in that window might not have been a stranger after all. Rain drummed against the windshield as Emily sat in her car, staring at the message glowing on her phone.
Stop digging. 2 words, no name, no number she recognized. She wanted to believe it was a cruel prank, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. Someone was watching her, just like someone had watched Katie all those years ago. That night she barely slept. Every creak in the hallway she flinched. Every shadow on the wall looked like movement. She tried calling Detective Hendricks, but it was after midnight. His voicemail clicked on, calm and steady. "Leave a message. I'll get back to you." She hung up without speaking. What could she even say? Morning came gray and heavy. She poured herself coffee, hands trembling so badly she spilled half of it. The diary sat on the table, still sealed in its evidence bag. The police had given it back temporarily, saying they'd already scanned the pages for fingerprints. It looked harmless now, blue cover, little silver hand charm, but she couldn't stop staring at it. It felt alive. By noon, she drove back to Maple Hollow. The streets looked smaller than she remembered. Houses sagged under years of weather and silence. Kids who used to race bikes down these roads had grown up or moved away. Yet everything smelled the same. Cut grass, wet pavement, faint pine from the woods beyond town. She parked near the old Lockwood property. The boards on the windows were warped now, one corner peeled open just enough to see the shadowy living room inside. On the lawn, the oak tree still stood, the same one Katie had pointed to that night, the tree by the window. Its bark was darker, thicker, roots curling out of the soil like twisted veins. Emily walked toward it, each step sinking into soft mud. For a moment, she thought she heard a whisper. Maybe wind, maybe memory. Then she saw it, carved into the lower trunk, almost hidden under moss. Letters, faint, but still there. K plus R. Katie and Ryan.
Her heart pounded. She ran her fingers over the grooves. The carving was old, probably made with a pocket knife. A teenager's secret. But if Ryan Keller's initials were here, then Katie had been seeing him, or at least meeting him. Maybe that's what the diary meant. Maybe he was the man by the tree. Emily stepped back, snapping a photo with her phone. Then she froze again. Someone was watching her from across the street. A man, tall, wearing a hooded jacket, stood near a lamppost, half hidden behind it. When she turned fully toward him, he slipped out of sight. Her pulse raced. She jumped into the car and locked the doors. When she looked again, the street was empty. She called Hendricks. This time he answered. "I think I just saw someone," she said, voice shaking. "At the old Lockwood house. He was watching me." "You shouldn't go there alone," he said sharply. "Where are you now?" "Driving home. I'll send a unit to check it out. Stay somewhere public tonight, okay? Somewhere busy." She nodded even though he couldn't see her. That evening she checked into a small roadside motel 20 miles away. The kind of place that smelled like bleach and old carpet, but felt anonymous enough to be safe. She sat on the bed, laptop open, searching for everything she could find about Ryan Keller. He'd left Maple Hollow in 1994, joined the military for a few years, then worked as a mechanic in another state. Married once, divorced. No criminal record. But on an old local blog, buried deep in internet archives, Emily found a post from 1997. Anyone remember Katie Lockwood? Some people said Ryan Keller knew more than he told police. The comment had no replies. Emily leaned back, rubbing her temples. She felt trapped between past and present, between the girl she used to be and the woman trying to solve her friend's mystery. Around midnight, her phone buzzed again, a message from a blocked number. "You shouldn't have gone back there." She dropped her phone. Her chest tightened. She wanted to call Hendricks again, but stopped herself. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe someone really was following her. Either way, she had to keep going. She reopened the scanned copy of the diary pages that the police had emailed her earlier for reference. There was one detail she hadn't noticed before. On the final page, near the half-finished sentence, faint smudges, like finger streaks, formed tiny shapes. Zooming in, she realized they were numbers. 3 of them, almost invisible. 3719. Coordinates? A date? She typed them into an online map search. Nothing matched directly. But when she added Maple Hollow beside it, the screen zoomed in on an area just outside town. The old quarry. Her stomach flipped. The quarry had been abandoned since the early 1990s after a rock slide killed 2 workers. It was fenced off. No trespassing signs everywhere. Kids used to dare each other to go there at night. Katie once said she'd never go near it. She hated the dark water that filled the pit. So why were those numbers pointing there? The next morning, Emily drove back. The gate hung crooked, rusted at the hinges. She slipped through the gap and followed the overgrown path down toward the quarry floor. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of algae. Birds screeched overhead, then went silent. At the edge of the water, something caught her eye, half buried under moss and leaves. A bracelet. Woven threads of pink and white. The same kind she and Katie used to make together. Her breath hitched. She knelt down, brushing dirt away. It was old, frayed but still intact. Her initials were stitched into one end, E.C. Katie had made it for her. She stepped back, heart pounding. Someone had been here before her. Someone who knew. A crunch of gravel behind her made her spin around. A man stood there, at the edge of the path. Older now, maybe mid-30s, but unmistakable. Ryan Keller. "Emily," he said, voice flat. "You shouldn't be here." Her throat dried. "What are you doing here, Ryan?" He looked down at the bracelet in her hand. "Thought it was gone years ago." "Why are there coordinates in Katie's diary leading here? What did she see that night?" He sighed, rubbing his face. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." He glanced at the dark water, then back at her. "Katie found something she shouldn't have. About your friend Kyle. About what he was doing for money. She thought she could fix it. She thought talking to me would help." Emily's head spun. Kyle? Her brother? What was he doing? Ryan didn't answer right away. Selling things, stealing things. But that night, it got worse. He met someone here. I followed because I wanted to stop him. Katie showed up instead. Her pulse thudded in her ears. "Are you saying you saw her?" He nodded slowly. "I tried to get her to leave, but then someone else came. Big guy. I don't know his name. He started yelling. There was a struggle. She ran. I chased after her, but she disappeared into the woods. I looked for hours. I swear I didn't hurt her." Emily's hands shook. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Who would believe me? Kyle was gone the next day, and then the cops were everywhere. I panicked. Left town." The wind howled across the quarry, carrying the scent of rain. Emily stared at him, searching for truth in his eyes. "You're lying," she whispered. He took a step closer. "No, but whoever that man was, he's still out there."
Before she could respond, headlights flashed at the top of the path. A car engine revved. Ryan's eyes widened. "We have to go," he said, backing away. But Emily didn't move. The car door slammed. Footsteps echoed down the hill. A tall silhouette emerged, face hidden beneath a cap. Ryan turned toward him. He started, but the word was cut short by the crack of something metallic, a sound like bone meeting steel. Ryan collapsed. Emily screamed. The man didn't speak, just stared for a moment before vanishing into the trees. She dropped beside Ryan, shaking him. "Ryan! Ryan!" He groaned, blood trickling down his temple. "Get out of here," he gasped. Emily stumbled to her feet, running toward the car she'd parked near the gate. Her mind raced, every instinct screaming that she'd just stepped into the same darkness that swallowed Katie Lockwood 12 years ago. Behind her, thunder rolled over Maple Hollow. The rain started again, washing over the quarry, erasing footprints, drowning echoes. And somewhere in that downpour, the truth waited, half buried, half alive, Just like the past, she could no longer escape. The police lights painted the quarry in red and blue. Rain hammered the mud, turning the ground into a swamp of flashing color and chaos. Officers moved in every direction, cordoning off the path, marking spots, collecting fragments of what had just happened. Ryan Keller was alive, barely. A paramedic crouched beside him, pressing a bandage to his head. His breathing came in ragged bursts, eyes half open. Emily stood a few feet away, trembling under a soaked blanket someone had wrapped around her. Her hair was plastered to her face. Her voice was gone. Detective Hendricks crouched next to her. "Emily, you're safe now. Tell me again. What did you see?" Her voice cracked. "A man. Tall. Wore a cap. He hit Ryan. Then he was just gone." Hendricks nodded, jaw tight. "Did you recognize him?" "No, but Ryan did. I think he knew him." That made him pause. He stood, motioning to the medics to hurry Ryan to the ambulance. Then he turned to his partner, Officer Martinez. "Get Keller under guard at the hospital. No press, no visitors until I say so." As the sirens faded, Hendricks looked down at the pit of black water. He muttered, "This place has buried too many things." 2 days later, the storm had cleared, but Maple Hollow felt heavier than ever. Emily hadn't gone home. She was staying with her aunt, a retired nurse who still lives just outside town. Every window was locked. Every creak in the hallway made her heart race. On the kitchen table lay everything the police had let her keep. The diary, the photo of the oak carving, and the friendship bracelet, now sealed in an evidence bag. She kept staring at them, searching for a pattern she couldn't name. Then her phone buzzed, a message from Hendricks. "Need to talk. Urgent. Meet at station in 20 minutes." When she arrived, Hendricks was already pacing his office. Files were spread everywhere. Crime scene photos, maps of the quarry, even old missing person flyers from 1993. He pointed to a board behind him. "We ran Keller's story. Parts of it check out." Emily frowned. "Parts?" "Kyle Lockwood," Hendricks said, tapping a photo of Katie's brother. "He was under investigation back in '93 for burglary and theft, mostly small stuff, car radios, store break-ins. But what's interesting is this." He slid a sheet across the desk. "A police report filed a week before Katie disappeared. An anonymous tip said Kyle was involved in something bigger. Arms, maybe. Drugs. The caller never gave a name, but the recording still exists." He pressed play. The voice crackled through the old tape, male, shaky. "He's meeting someone by the quarry tonight. He's bringing her too. I think she's in danger." Emily's stomach twisted. "That's Ryan," she whispered. Hendricks nodded slowly. "We think so too. But here's the part that doesn't fit. Kyle Lockwood left town the same night his sister vanished. Never used his bank account again. No credit trail. Nothing. It's like he vanished with her." Emily leaned forward. "You think they both disappeared? Or that one made the other disappear?" He pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside was a photo, grainy, black and white, taken from a gas station camera near the highway. A man, tall and thin, buying fuel. The timestamp, June 17th, 1993, 2:46 a.m. Just hours after Katie was last seen. The man's face was blurry, but the car behind him, a faded blue pickup, was distinct. Kyle's truck, the same one found abandoned 2 days later by the state line. Emily's throat dried. Then who was the man at the quarry, the one who attacked Ryan? Hendricks sat back, eyes heavy. "That's the question. Whoever he is, he's been watching you. We traced those texts you got. Burner phone. Bought last week in another county. We're checking the store cameras now." She swallowed hard. "And the diary? What do those numbers mean?"
He hesitated, then pulled out another photo. "We had our lab enhance the image of those faint numbers. You were right, they're coordinates. But not just one location. It's 3 sets, like a triangle." He placed a map between them. 3 red pins formed a shape around Maple Hollow, one at the quarry, one near the old Lockwood house, and one deep inside the state forest. Emily pointed to the last one. "What's there?" "Nothing. At least, nothing on record. But we sent a team this morning." He flipped open a folder and slid over a photo taken just hours ago. It showed a mound of dirt, freshly disturbed, half covered by roots. Emily's breath caught. "What is that?" "They're still digging," Hendricks said, "but they already found something. A piece of fabric. Faded, floral pattern. Matches the nightgown Katie Lockwood was wearing when she vanished." The room went silent. Hendricks leaned forward. "I need you to understand, Emily, this isn't over. Whoever's behind this has been protecting that secret for 12 years, and now that you've started looking, they're scared." She looked down at the diary. Her reflection swam faintly on its cover. "Katie wasn't just writing about a crush," she said quietly. "She was trying to leave us a map." Hendricks nodded, "And I think she knew what would happen if she failed." That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She sat by the window of her aunt's house staring into the dark field beyond. Every so often, a car would pass on the distant road, headlights slicing through fog. She picked up the diary again, flipping through pages she'd read 100 times. But one line near the end made her pause. It was barely legible, but she recognized Katie's handwriting. "If I don't make it home, look where the moon hides." She whispered it to herself. Where the moon hides. Her gaze shifted to the forest line. When the moon rose behind the trees, it vanished halfway up, blocked by a hill that led toward the old ranger's cabin, a place she hadn't thought about in years. Katie used to joke about it, saying it looked like the moon was going to sleep there. Emily felt her pulse quicken. She grabbed her keys. If the coordinates pointed to a triangle, maybe that cabin was the missing point, the place where the diary's message finally connected. She didn't tell Hendricks this time. She didn't text anyone. The night air was cold as she drove out of town deeper into the woods. Branches clawed at the windshield. The headlights flickered across empty road signs, one after another. Then she saw it. The cabin, crouched at the end of a dirt path, half collapsed, its roof eaten by moss. She parked, stepped out, flashlight trembling in her hand. As she approached, she noticed something carved into the wooden door. Old letters, deep and rough. K+R. Again! Her heart stopped. She pushed the door open. The smell hit first. Damp wood, rot, something metallic underneath. Then through the dust and cobwebs, her light caught something glinting on the floor. A necklace, silver with a small heart pendant. The same one Katie wore in every photo. And beside it, scrawled faintly on the wall in red, almost invisible beneath years of grime, were words that made her drop the light completely. "He was supposed to protect me." The beam of Emily's fallen flashlight rolled, casting crooked shadows across the cabin floor. The words on the wall, "He was supposed to protect me," seemed to breathe with the light, fading and reappearing as if the house itself remembered what happened here. Emily crouched, hands shaking, and picked up the necklace. The silver heart pendant was cold against her palm, almost frozen. On the back, faint but still legible, were initials carved by hand, KL, and a smaller RK beneath it. Katie Lockwood and Ryan Keller. Emily's breath hitched. No, that can't be. Her mind spun back to the quarry, to Ryan's panicked face, to the way he'd gone quiet when she mentioned Kyle's name. Her flashlight flickered again, landing on something else near the wall. A small tin box, rusted shut. She hesitated, then pried it open. Inside were scraps of paper, letters, photos, folded notes, all yellowed with time. The first was a torn notebook page. June 12th, 1993. He told me we'd leave together. Said we'd be free, but he doesn't know what Kyle did. I saw it. I can't unsee it. I don't know who to trust anymore. Emily's hands trembled as she read another. He said he'd protect me. Said no one would ever hurt me again. But I think he's lying. And beneath that, an old Polaroid. 2 teenagers laughing under the quarry's oak tree. Katie in her nightgown, Ryan with his arm around her. On the back, scrawled in fading ink, "Before everything changed." Emily stumbled back, her mind flooding with the weight of 12 years. The diary had been Katie's warning, and this was her proof.
Ryan Keller wasn't just a friend, he'd been there that night. Back in town, Detective Hendricks was awake when the call came in. His team had finished digging at the forest site. He answered groggily, rubbing his eyes. "Tell me." The voice on the other end was tight. "We found skeletal remains. Young female, approximate age 15. Hendricks froze. "Identification." "Dental records match. Katie Lockwood." The detective leaned back in his chair, eyes unfocused. "God help us." Then the tech added, "There's something else, sir. We found a second set of prints. Partial match came back already. Ryan Keller." Hendricks didn't hesitate. "Get a warrant, now." Emily was still at the cabin when she heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Blue lights flickered through the trees, painting the woods in ghostly flashes. Hendricks stepped out first, gun drawn, but voice calm. "Emily, don't move." She held up her hands. "It's okay. I found something. You have to see this." He approached slowly, scanning the shadows. "What the hell are you doing out here alone?" "I had to come," she said, voice trembling. "Katie's message, where the moon hides. This is it. And I found her necklace, notes. Ryan's name is all over them." Hendricks took the tin box, flipping through the contents quickly. His face hardened. "He's been lying." "What about the other site?" asked she. He exhaled heavily. "We found her. Katie's gone, Emily, but the evidence ties Ryan directly to the scene." Emily shook her head, tears blurring her vision. "He said he was protecting her." "Maybe he thought he was," Hendricks said quietly, "or maybe that's what he told himself." They returned to town before sunrise. The sky glowed faintly pink over the rooftops. Reporters were already gathering near the police station, word spreading faster than the department could contain it. Ryan Keller was taken into custody at the hospital. His face was pale, his head still bandaged. When Hendricks entered the room, Ryan looked up, weary, defeated. "You found her, didn't you?" Ryan whispered. Hendricks said nothing at first. He set the tin box on the table. "We found this, and her necklace, and your fingerprints at the burial site." Ryan looked away, jaw trembling. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that." "Then tell me how it happened," Hendricks pressed, "because right now it looks like you buried a 15-year-old girl in the woods." Ryan's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't kill her." "Then who did?" He stared down at his hands. "Kyle, he was using her. He made her do things. I tried to stop him. That night at the quarry, I told her to leave with me. But she said she couldn't, said if she ran, Kyle would hurt her mom. She ran into the woods crying. I followed, but it was dark. Then I heard a scream. When I found her, she wasn't breathing." Hendricks leaned forward, "And you buried her." Ryan nodded slowly, voice cracking. "I thought Kyle would come for me next. I was scared. I buried her near the old cabin. I thought I could keep her secret safe." Hendricks slammed his hand on the table. "You kept her killer safe." Ryan flinched, tears spilling down his cheeks. "You don't understand. He disappeared after that. Everyone thought he ran, but he never left. He's still here." Hendricks froze. "What do you mean he's still here?" Ryan met his eyes. "Kyle Lockwood didn't vanish. He changed his name." The detective's blood went cold. "Who?" Ryan whispered. "The man who called you last week. The one who said he'd help you find Katie's body. That's him." Hendricks' heart thundered. "That was Officer Dean Lockwood?" Ryan nodded slowly. "He's her cousin, but that's what he tells people. Kyle's not dead. He's been hiding in plain sight."
Hendricks burst out of the room, barking orders. "Lockwood, find him now!" But by the time officers reached his house, it was empty. The patrol car gone, his phone left behind, still buzzing with new messages. One was from Emily. "I'm heading home. Can we talk? I think I understand what Katie was trying to say." Another followed a minute later. "Wait, there's someone outside my aunt's house." Then silence. The patrol car was found an hour later on a back road outside Maple Hollow. The engine was still warm. The driver's door was open. Inside, on the passenger seat, lay a single item, Katie Lockwood's diary. The last page had been torn out, and written in fresh ink on the inside cover were 6 chilling words. You never should have opened it. Rain came down again that night, a steady hiss against the windows of Maple Hollow. The town was half asleep, unaware that somewhere in its quiet streets, a predator had stirred awake. Detective Hendricks stood in front of the command center map. Dozens of red pins marked search points across town. Radios crackled in every corner. Still no sign of Lockwood? He asked, voice tight. Negative, Officer Martinez replied. He ditched the patrol car by County Road 6. No witnesses, no tracks. Hendricks ran a hand through his hair. He's been playing us from the start. He had access to every file, every update. He knew where we were looking before we even got there. Martinez hesitated. You think he took Emily? The detective's jaw clenched. If he's the same Kyle Lockwood who hurt Katie, then yes, and he's not finished. Across town, Emily woke in darkness. Her head throbbed. The taste of blood sat heavy in her mouth. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then she realized she couldn't move. Her wrists were bound behind her with tape. Her legs, too. The air smelled of gasoline and old wood. When her eyes adjusted, she saw the faint outline of tools hanging on the wall. Rusted pliers, wrenches, a chainsaw blade. It was a garage, and somewhere nearby, water dripped steadily. Plink, 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 like a clock counting down. She tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. Then a voice came from the dark. I told you to stop reading. She froze. The sound was calm, almost familiar. A figure stepped forward, pulling down the hood of a rain jacket. The flashlight beam hit his face. Officer Dean Lockwood. Only now she could see it clearly. The scar under his chin, the faint tattoo at his collarbone, the same one she'd seen in an old photo of Kyle. He smiled faintly. I didn't want it to end this way, Emily. You were supposed to let her rest. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. You're Kyle, she whispered. He sighed. Was. That name died a long time ago. I had to start over. Dean was easier. New town, new life, no questions. You people wanted a hero, so I gave you one. Why? She croaked. Why did you kill her? His expression darkened. You think it was that simple? She wasn't a child anymore. She thought she could ruin everything. She said she'd tell the police what she saw. She didn't understand there were people counting on me. I couldn't let her destroy it all. He crouched down, his voice soft, almost sad. I told her I loved her, but love doesn't fix betrayal. She flinched as he reached into his coat and pulled out something small. Katie's torn diary page, folded and worn. This was supposed to stay buried, but Ryan had to dig it up, and then you had to go snooping. She forced her voice to steady. You didn't bury her secret, Kyle. You buried your guilt. He laughed quietly. You sound like her, always so sure of yourself. You know what she said the night she died? You can't protect me if you're the one I need protection from. For a moment, his face twisted, something breaking behind his eyes. Then he turned away, muttering she should have kept her mouth shut. Emily's pulse raced. She glanced toward the workbench, a set of pliers, a screwdriver, tools within reach if she could move closer. She shifted her legs slightly, wincing as the tape cut into her skin. Kyle noticed. Don't bother, no one's coming for you. But outside, in the rain-soaked night, engines roared to life. Hendricks' voice barked through the radio. Unit 3, head toward the industrial park. GPS pinged his patrol tablet near the old freight depot.
Inside the garage, Kyle was pacing now, muttering to himself. They'll never find this place in time. They never did before. Emily took a shaky breath. Katie trusted you. She wrote about it in her diary. That made him stop. She wrote, Emily continued, that you said you'd keep her safe, that you promised. His jaw tightened. I did. Then prove it. Let me go. Tell the truth. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Remorse, maybe memory. Then it vanished. You're too much like her, always thinking you can fix everything. He walked to the wall, grabbed a gas can, and started pouring it across the floor. The sharp smell filled the air. Emily's panic surged. "You'll never get away with this, Kyle. Hendricks knows who you are." He stopped and looked back. "He doesn't know where I am." But at that exact moment, a faint sound echoed outside, the crunch of tires, the slam of a car door. Kyle froze. Emily's heart leaped. He turned back to her, furious now. "You brought them here!" She shook her head, tears streaming. "I didn't! Please!" He raised the flashlight, smashing the bulb against the table, plunging the room into darkness. "Then we'll finish this the way it should have ended," he hissed. Outside, Hendricks moved silently between the rows of empty buildings. The rain had turned into mist, wrapping the area in a ghostly haze. Martinez's voice came through the earpiece. "Thermal shows 1 heat signature inside the garage, possibly 2. Go quiet, we move on my signal." They approached from opposite sides. Inside, Emily's breath came in short gasps. She could barely see him in the dark, only the glint in metal as Kyle reached for something on the bench. The sound of boots crunching on gravel outside made him snap his head toward the door. He grabbed Emily by the hair, dragging her upright. "If they come in, you die first," he growled. She cried out, struggling, but his grip was iron. The door burst open. Hendricks and Martinez stormed in, flashlights cutting through the black. "Drop it, Lockwood!" Hendricks shouted. For a second, Kyle hesitated, his breathing ragged. The beam of Hendricks's light caught his face, wild eyes, sweat pouring from his temple. He shoved Emily forward, backing toward the rear exit. "Don't do this," Hendricks warned. "It's over." Kyle's voice cracked. "You think I'll let you drag me back? You don't understand. She ruined me. She made me nothing." He raised a gun. A shot rang out. Glass shattered. Emily hit the floor, ears ringing. When she looked up, Kyle was slumped against the wall, the gun slipping from his hand. Hendricks stood frozen, weapon still raised. Kyle's last words came out in a rasp. "Check the diary." Then silence. The next morning, the rain finally stopped. The sky was pale and washed out, as if the town itself was exhausted. Emily sat on the back steps of the station, a blanket around her shoulders. Hendricks joined her, holding the small diary, Katie's, sealed in an evidence bag. "He was right about one thing," Hendricks said softly. "There's something in here we missed." Emily looked up. "The last page." He nodded. It was torn out, but before he died, Kyle had it in his pocket. He pulled it out carefully and unfolded it. The paper was damp, smudged, but the writing was still visible. "If anyone finds this, please tell them it wasn't just him. There's another, someone who made him do it, someone they all trust." Emily's skin grew cold. "There's another?" Hendricks nodded grimly. "This isn't over." He handed her the diary, whatever Katie was trying to warn us about. "It's bigger than Kyle, and she wanted you to be the one to see it through." Emily stared at the words until they blurred. Then, through tears, she whispered, "I will." The diary pages fluttered in Melissa's trembling hands. The old paper smelled like dust and something faintly metallic, like rust and time. The words were written in faded blue ink, some of them smeared, as if tears had hit them before they ever dried. She whispered each sentence as if saying them out loud might somehow make the past reappear. "I heard them fighting again last night. Mom says not to listen, but how can I not? He scares me sometimes. He scares everyone." The words hit like a punch to the chest. Melissa glanced over at Detective Rowe, who was sitting across from her at the kitchen table, eyes narrowed, recorder still running. "Who do you think she meant?" Rowe asked quietly. Melissa didn't answer at first. Her throat tightened. "Her dad," she whispered. "He used to yell. A lot. Everyone in town knew they had problems, but no one ever said anything. You just didn't get involved back then." Rowe nodded slightly, jotting something down. "Keep reading." The next paragraph was worse. "I think I'm going to tell him I know. He can't hide it anymore. If something happens to me, tell someone to look in the crawl space." Melissa froze.
Her heart thudded. The words blurred in front of her eyes. "Detective," she breathed, pushing the diary across the table. "You need to see this." Roe leaned in, scanning the lines. His brow furrowed. Jesus, this changes everything. That night, the police returned to the old Ryman house. It had been standing empty for years now, abandoned after the parents passed away. Weeds grew up through the cracked walkway. The windows were boarded up. The smell of mildew and rot hit them as they pried open the door. Inside, everything was frozen in time. The floral wallpaper, the couch covered in a faded sheet, the photo frame still on the mantel. It was like the house was waiting for someone to finish a story that had been paused mid-sentence. Roe and his team moved carefully through each room. Flashlights swept across walls, floors, and doors that creaked like they hadn't been opened in decades. Then they found it, the crawl space. It was behind the water heater, a low, square opening sealed by a wooden board nailed across the frame. Roe crouched down, tugged at it, and the nails gave way with a long, tired squeal. The smell that came out was thick and stale, like something that had been trapped for years. Inside was darkness. One of the officers aimed a flashlight. Dust particles danced in the beam. The space was small, barely big enough for a child to crawl through. But as the light moved, something glinted deep in the shadows. A bracelet. It was delicate, silver, with a small heart charm. Exactly like the one Sarah used to wear every day in middle school. Melissa remembered it vividly. She had even helped her tie it on one morning before class. Roe reached in carefully, pulling it out with gloved hands. The charm was tarnished, but still recognizable. He turned to Melissa, his face grave. "Is this hers?" Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "That's Sarah's." For a long moment, no one spoke. The house felt like it was breathing around them, like the walls themselves were exhaling secrets. The next morning, news broke all over town. New evidence found in 1993's Sleepover disappearance. Reporters flooded the quiet neighborhood, cameras flashing against the gray sky. People whispered in grocery stores and church parking lots. Old memories resurfaced, stories people had tried to bury. But Roe wasn't satisfied. He went back to the diary, reading it line by line. The next entries grew darker, more fragmented. "I can't sleep anymore. He keeps watching me. I think he knows I saw. Melissa says everything will be fine, but she doesn't know what's really happening." That line made Melissa's blood run cold. "Wait," she said, pointing at it. "That can't be right. She wrote my name." Roe looked up slowly. "What do you mean?" "I don't know what she's talking about," Melissa said, shaking her head. I never... Her voice cracked. Memories flooded in. The last night of the sleepover, Sarah whispering something about needing to tell her something important, then brushing it off. The way her eyes had darted toward the window that night, like she had seen something she couldn't explain. What if she meant something else? Roe asked. What if she tried to tell you that night? Melissa pressed her hands to her face. "I don't remember," she whispered. "I was just a kid. I thought she was scared of the dark." Roe leaned back in his chair, thinking. The diary was hidden for a reason. Someone didn't want it found. And as if on cue, the lights flickered in Melissa's apartment. Once, twice. A fuse, maybe. Or something else. When the power came back, Roe noticed the window was open, and there, on the table next to the diary, was a small, folded note that hadn't been there before. It was written in the same faded blue ink. "Not everything buried stays hidden." Melissa stared at it, her pulse hammering in her ears. "Detective," she whispered. "How was that possible?" Roe didn't answer. He just picked up the note, eyes dark with the kind of fear that comes when you realize the past isn't done with you yet. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, and somewhere in the distance,
An old house creaked as if it was finally waking up after 12 long years of silence. And deep in that crawl space, behind the loose boards and dust, something else waited to be found. Something that wasn't ready to stay buried. The morning after the note appeared, the air felt heavier in Maple Hollow. Clouds hung low, swallowing the sun, and the kind of quiet that follows a storm had settled over the streets. Detective Rowe parked his car outside the old Ryman house again, the tires crunching over gravel. Melissa sat beside him, clutching the diary in her lap like it was both a lifeline and a curse. They weren't supposed to be there without a warrant, but something in Rowe's gut told him time wasn't on their side. Too many things didn't add up. The diary appearing out of nowhere, the bracelet, the note written in the same hand as a girl who had been gone for 12 years. The house loomed ahead, still and hollow. The boards in the windows rattled softly in the wind. Inside, the air was thick with damp and decay. Each step they took echoed through the empty rooms. Rowe headed straight for the basement. "If there's something left," he said, his voice low, "it's down here." The floorboards creaked as they descended. Melissa followed close behind, flashlight trembling in her hand. She could feel it in her bones, that something in this place still remembered that night. When they reached the crawl space, Rowe crouched and shone his light inside again. The silver bracelet was gone.
He froze. "Wait," he muttered. "It was right here yesterday." Melissa's breath caught. "Detective, who else knew about this?" "No one," he said. "Just us and the forensics team, and they logged everything." The silence that followed felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Then, Melissa's flashlight caught something else. Faint writing scrawled on the inside wall of the crawl space. Words carved shallowly into the wood, half covered in dust. She leaned closer, her voice shaking as she read them out loud. "I didn't want to go." Rowe stared at it. "She carved that herself?" Melissa nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "She must have been here. She was here." Rowe's voice was barely a whisper. "But why didn't anyone find this before?" Melissa swallowed hard. "Because someone didn't want them to." They stepped back, scanning the walls, the floor, every inch of the space, until Rowe's light caught a small, square patch of concrete that didn't match the rest. He knelt down, tapping it with the end of his flashlight. Hollow. He exchanged a glance with Melissa. "Call the sheriff's office," he said quietly. Within an hour, the basement was filled with uniforms, crime scene tape, and the low hum of radios. They worked carefully, chipping away the patch of concrete until something metallic clinked underneath, a small, rusted tin box. Inside were several items wrapped in old plastic: a photograph of Sarah and Melissa at a summer fair, 2 folded letters, and a thin silver chain. Rowe unfolded one of the letters and began to read. "Dear Melissa, if you ever find this, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave. I wanted to tell you the truth that night, but I was scared. He said he'd hurt you if I did. He said no one would believe me anyway. But I saw what he did to her. I saw what he kept in the shed." Rowe's jaw clenched. "Who's he?" he asked. Melissa stared at the page. Her heart was pounding so loud she could barely hear herself think. Her dad. Or maybe... She stopped. "No, wait." She flipped to the second letter, the ink smudged but legible. "It wasn't my father. He just looked the other way. It was someone else, someone who came by the house at night when he was working late. I thought he was helping us. I thought he cared." Melissa's fingers went cold. She whispered the name before she even realized it. "Pastor Green." Rowe looked up sharply. "The pastor?" Melissa said, her voice cracking. "He was close to the family. He ran the youth group. Everyone trusted him. My mom used to say he was like a second father to Sarah. Ro's eyes darkened. And he still lives here. They left the house immediately, the diary and letters sealed in evidence bags. By the time they reached the church on the edge of town, night had fallen. The stained glass windows glowed faintly under the streetlight, the cross casting a long shadow across the front steps. Ro knocked on the door. No answer. He tried again, harder this time. Still nothing. Then from inside a voice, calm, low, too steady. "You shouldn't have come here." The door creaked open, and Pastor Green stood there. His hair was grayer now, his eyes dull but calculating. "Detective," he said, a small smile on his lips. "And Melissa Carter. My, it's been years." Ro took a step forward. "We need to ask you a few questions." "I'm sure you do," Green said softly. "But some things are better left in God's hands, don't you think?" Ro held up the evidence bag with the letter. "We found this. In the Ryman house." For a moment something flickered in Green's expression, the smallest crack in his calm. Then it was gone. "You shouldn't dig up ghosts. You'll only wake the ones that don't forgive." Melissa felt her stomach twist. "You did something to her," she said, her voice trembling. "You hurt Sarah." Green's smile faded. "I saved her," he said quietly. "You have no idea what that family was into. You think she was some innocent girl? She saw things she shouldn't have seen." Ro stepped closer. "What things?" Green didn't answer. He just looked past them, toward the empty church hall where the faint sound of a creaking door echoed in the dark. "Detective," he said softly, "sometimes evil doesn't die. It just waits." Ro reached for his cuffs, but before he could move, Green turned and slipped into the shadows of the sanctuary. The sound of his footsteps faded. When the officers swept the building minutes later, he was gone. Vanished, just like Sarah. And when they checked the basement of the church later that night, they found something else. A small, child-sized shoe half buried in the dirt. Melissa recognized it instantly. It was the same kind Sarah had worn the night she disappeared. The town of Maple Hollow would never sleep the same again. Because now they knew the past wasn't buried. It was waiting, watching, whispering through the walls. And the diary, that fragile little book that had sat untouched for 12 years, wasn't finished telling its story. There were still pages left blank, and someone or something wanted them filled. It rained that night. A long, cold rain that swept through Maple Hollow and washed away everything except the whispers. The town felt haunted again, like it had in the months after Sarah disappeared, quiet, watchful, uneasy. Melissa couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, the diary open before her, the lamp flickering like it was fighting to stay alive. The words on the last pages stared back at her, smudged, rushed, like they had been written in panic. "I think he knows I told. He came to my window last night. If I don't come back, tell Melissa I'm sorry. Tell her I didn't mean to leave her alone." Melissa ran her fingers over the ink, tracing each letter. The guilt that had been buried for 12 years clawed its way up again. That night, the night Sarah vanished, she had heard something. A noise outside, soft tapping against the glass. She remembered Sarah whispering her name, but she was scared. She had pulled the covers over her head and gone back to sleep. And when she woke up, Sarah was gone. A sound broke the silence, a car door slamming, tires on wet pavement. She moved to the window and peered out, a black sedan parked across the street. Headlights off, engine running. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered, breath catching. A man's voice deep and calm. "You should stop reading that diary, Melissa." She froze,
Who is this? But the line went dead. Her heart raced. She grabbed her coat, the diary, and headed straight for the police station. Roe was still there, hunched over case files, coffee gone cold beside him. When he saw her, he frowned. What happened? She told him about the call, the car, everything. He took the diary gently, flipping to the last page. "There's more writing here," he said. "Did you notice this before?" Melissa leaned closer. At the very bottom of the page, almost invisible, were faint words written sideways, pressed hard into the paper. "Not the pastor. Look deeper." Roe's eyes widened. Then who? They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of those words hanging in the air. Then Roe's phone rang. It was forensics. They'd found fingerprints on the tin box from the crawl space. Not the pastor's, not Sarah's, but someone else's. Melissa's stomach dropped when Roe said the name. David Carter. Her father. Melissa's hands went cold. "That's not possible," she whispered. "He barely knew the Rymans. He was working that night." Roe's voice softened. "We checked. He was on a night shift, but he clocked out early." The room seemed to tilt. Melissa shook her head, tears spilling down her face. No, he would never. Roe reached across the desk. "I need to show you something." He opened a folder. Inside was a photograph, taken the week after Sarah disappeared. It showed a group of volunteers helping in the search, and in the background, almost out of focus, was David Carter, standing beside Pastor Green. His hand rested on the pastor's shoulder, and both men were smiling. Melissa backed away from the desk, her breath coming fast. "No," she whispered. "He said he was helping the police. He said—" Roe's expression was grim. "Melissa, we think your father might have been the one she was trying to protect you from." Something inside her broke. She remembered the late nights he'd come home smelling like smoke and rain, the times he told her never to talk about Sarah, never to bring her up again, the way he'd flinched when the police knocked on their door back then. She had buried those memories under years of silence, but now they clawed their way back. Roe stood, grabbing his keys. "We're going to your old house, now." They drove through the rain, the wipers struggling to keep up. Melissa sat stiffly staring out the window as familiar streets blurred past. Her childhood home looked smaller than she remembered, the paint peeling, the porch sagging, a single light flickering inside. They stepped in cautiously. The air was stale, heavy with dust, and something sour. The basement door was half open. Roe went first, gun drawn, flashlight cutting through the dark. The beam landed on something metallic, a locked cabinet built into the wall. He pried it open. Inside were boxes, old, labeled boxes. Photos, newspaper clippings, even a few pieces of jewelry that didn't belong to Melissa's family. And one more diary. This one had a red cover, its edges singed like it had been near a fire. On the first page, in Sarah's handwriting, were the words, "He said Melissa's dad would take care of it, that I should trust him. I shouldn't have." Melissa's knees went weak. She sank to the floor. "No," she whispered, "that's not true." Roe flipped through more pages, drawings, coded notes, fragments of fear written by a girl who had known too much. The last page was dated October 9th, 1993. "He's here. He says we're going for a drive. I don't want to go. I wish I could tell Melissa goodbye." Roe looked at Melissa, voice low. She never left that night willingly. Tears blurred her vision. "He said he went looking for her. He lied to me all these years?" Suddenly, there was a noise upstairs, footsteps, slow and deliberate. Roe motioned for her to stay back and climbed the stairs quietly, flashlight raised. The steps creaked under his boots. When he reached the top, the door to the kitchen was open. A shadow stood there. David Carter, older now, gaunt, eyes hollow, but unmistakably him.
"I didn't want you to find it," he said finally, voice trembling. "You weren't supposed to see any of that." "Dad," she said, tears streaming, "what did you do?" He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "It wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to die. She was scared, she ran. I tried to stop her, but she fell." His voice cracked. "I didn't mean to." Rose stepped forward. "Where is she?" David's eyes glistened. "I buried her near the old creek, behind the church. Green helped me. He said it was the only way to keep you safe, Melissa. She was going to tell." Melissa's breath broke into sobs. "Tell what?" David looked at her, guilt and terror swimming in his eyes. "About Green, about the girls, about the others." The weight of those words hung heavy in the air. Ro moved to cuff him, but David didn't resist. He just stared at Melissa like a man already gone. "I was trying to protect you," he whispered. "Everything I did was for you." When they let him outside, the rain finally stopped. The night felt too still, too quiet. At dawn, officers searched the creek behind the church. Within hours, they found what they were looking for: a shallow grave, long covered by roots and moss. Inside was a small bundle of remains, a silver heart bracelet still clasped to the wrist. It was Sarah. After 12 long years, she had finally been found. But the truth that surfaced with her was heavier than anyone expected. A story of fear, silence, and secrets buried under faith and family ties that no one dared question. The town mourned again. The church shut its doors. Pastor Green vanished for good, leaving behind only whispers and shadows. Melissa stood by the creek weeks later, holding Sarah's diary in her hands. The pages fluttered in the breeze, catching the first light of morning. "I found you," she whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't hear you that night." Somewhere in the distance, a wind rustled through the trees, soft, almost like a voice saying goodbye. The diary closed with a quiet snap, and for the first time in 12 years, Maple Hollow fell silent. But silence, Melissa realized, wasn't peace. It was just what comes after the truth finally stops screaming. Months passed, but the town of Maple Hollow never really went back to normal. The story of Sarah Ryman's disappearance and what had finally come to light spread across every news station, every newspaper, every small town gossip circle. But no one really knew what to say. Some spoke her name softly, like it might still echo in the wind. Others just avoided it altogether, as if pretending it never happened would somehow make the past less cruel. Melissa stayed. She couldn't leave. Not yet, not after everything that had been uncovered. Her father was gone, serving time while awaiting trial. Pastor Green was still missing, last seen driving north on a rainy night, his car later found abandoned by the highway. There were rumors he'd crossed the border. Others whispered he never made it far, that the woods took him. But no one could prove it, and no one wanted to look too hard. The old Ryman house was demolished that spring. The land was cleared, grass growing where Payne used to live. But sometimes when the wind blew from the east, neighbors swore they could still hear faint tapping, like a girl knocking softly from the other side of a wall. Melissa visited the creek every week. She'd bring flowers, lilies, the kind Sarah used to pick on the way home from school. The spot was peaceful now. The air smelled like wet earth and pine. But sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she could still hear Sarah's laughter, light, easy, echoing through the trees like it never laughed. The diary was now sealed in evidence, but Melissa had photocopies of every page. She read them often, not to relive the horror, but to remember the girl behind the tragedy, the one who loved sketching in the margins, who dreamed of leaving their little town, who wrote about fireflies and summer fairs, and her best friend, Melissa. The last page was blank. Detective Rowe had offered to give a statement for the national report, but he declined the interviews. He said some stories shouldn't be told by headlines. They should be felt, lived, whispered, remembered. One evening as the sun sank behind the trees, Melissa sat on her porch with a cup of tea. The light was warm and soft, the world momentarily calm. She thought about all the nights she'd been afraid to sleep, the shadows that used to move in the corners of her mind. But now the fear had changed.
It wasn't about monsters hiding under beds or dark basements anymore. It was about the kind that wear familiar faces, the kind that smile in family photos, the kind you never see coming. Her phone buzzed. It was a new number, but she hesitated before answering. Hello? Silence. Then a faint, static-laced whisper. You found her. Melissa froze. Who is this? More static. Then, but there were others. The line went dead. The teacup slipped from her hand and shattered against the porch. Her heart pounded. She glanced out at the dark tree line. The wind stirred, carrying the faintest sound, like a laugh, light and distant. She backed towards the door, eyes still on the woods. It's over, she whispered to herself. It's done. But deep down she knew it wasn't. Because sometimes evil doesn't die. It just changes its name, moves down the road, finds new friends. And sometimes it leaves behind a diary, waiting for someone new to open it. A week later, another family moved into Maple Hollow. A couple with a young daughter, bright, curious, full of life. On their first day, while exploring the backyard, the little girl found something half buried under a patch of grass by the fence. It was a small red notebook, burnt around the edges. When she opened it, the first page was blank. But on the second, in faded blue ink, were 6 words that made her stop. Not everything buried stays hidden forever. She looked around. The wind rustled softly through the trees. Then she closed the book and ran inside to show her mother. And as the door swung shut behind her, the pages of the diary fluttered open again, like something inside it had just started breathing. In every small town, there's a story people don't talk about, one that hides behind polite smiles and church bells and quiet porches. Maple Hollow was one of those places. And for 12 years, a little girl's voice went unheard until someone finally decided to listen. But sometimes when the truth surfaces, it doesn't set you free. It only shows you how deep the darkness really goes. Because some stories never end. They just wait for someone new to find them. Subscribe for more true crime investigations that defied expectations. Like this video if you believe cold cases deserve more attention. Comment where you're watching from and what the weather is like today. Share this video with someone who appreciates true crime stories.